Hey, this is Chris Sonnenschein with eXp Realty. Thanks for joining me. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with some key leaders and some residents of Canton and create a community tour, and I'm excited to take you on this journey with. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you to drop comments below as we progress through the video. I'd love to hear what you love about Canton, and I'd also like to ask that you drop some more comments as it relates to what should be my next community tour. And please like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on all the content around real estate and living in Sioux Falls and our surrounding communities. Established in 1866, Canton has roughly 3,200 residents. Now, the population has stayed fairly consistent for the last 40 years, likely due to the unique small businesses and the thriving economy, as well as an industrial park, and largely in part due to the fact that Canton is the county seat for Lincoln County. What's interesting about Lincoln County is Lincoln County, it ranges, it varies a little bit, but it roughly lands year over year recently in the top 10 to 13 fastest growing counties in the country. And that's largely due to the fact that Sioux Falls is going the exponential growth of the Harrisburg School District. But there's some interesting things that are coming to Canton in the realm of economic development that I'm really excited to share with you. But before we get into that, this community is so rich with history, I want to share some interesting facts with you. One of the stops and interviews I had was actually at the Depot Museum. The railroad came to Canton in 1879 and provided a direct line to Chicago. The depot itself consisted of an express room, a cafe, men and ladies waiting areas, and a ticket office. Records show that as many as 65 trains would come in and out of Canton in any given 24-hour period. The last passenger trains came through in the 1960s, but the depot still exists today and serves as a county office as well as a museum packed full of history of Canton. And it's also where I picked up this book, which you can get down there. It's packed with cool information. While at the depot, I learned that the area where Canton is built, constructed, and resides today, prior to being settled, was called the Trapper Shanty. And the reason that came to pass is, as the settlers at that time, I think mostly Norwegian, were moving to the area, in Sioux City, they were asking about the Dakota Territory, and they were asking what's the best spot to land. And those particular residents, or the people that were inhabiting that area, suggested the Trapper Shanty, which is now Canton. As more people started to settle in the Canton area, they wanted to create a town. And the Dakota Territorial Legislature meeting was looking for a county seat. And the location of Canton was chosen, yet they needed a name for the town. And this is interesting. Now, historically speaking, writers may disagree on this, but this is one of the thoughts or interesting facts, that Canton, South Dakota was named after a town called Canton in China, as if you were to dig a hole directly south through the earth, you would land in Canton, China. That's how Canton got its name. Now, Canton in China was actually a seaport and thought to be the gate city to China. And that's also why Canton became the gate city to the Dakota Territory. Now, while at the depot, I learned some interesting facts that I had to go on site and see. This was my first stop. So I'm standing outside in a snowbank, literally, because I couldn't help but want to bring this to you. If you can see just behind me, that path cut right there in the trees, that used to be a ski slope, not just any ski slope. That used to be a big jump. It was a 60-foot ramp with a 275-foot drop-off. And I tell you what, people would come here to visit Augustana College, and they would compete nationally here for skiing. In fact, in 1932, this ended up being the U.S. Olympic trial location for the 1932 Olympics. And during that trial, A record was set at a 192-foot jump. Now, for all of the people who are of Norwegian descent and perhaps an alumni of this institution, here's an interesting Norse fact for you. So I have to ask, are all of you Augustana University alum from Sioux Falls aware of the history of your school? In 1860, Augustana was started as a seminary in Chicago, Illinois. Obviously, it was designed to prepare men for clergy, specifically Lutheran pastors, as well as preparing men for the teaching profession. Now, Augustana moved from Illinois to Wisconsin to Iowa, and then finally here in Canton in 1884, where Augustana College was created directly behind me. Now in 1917 is where it moved to Sioux Falls, where it currently is today, Augustana University. Today in time, this is now an apartment building, very cool historic artifact, and a lot of history. While I'm thoroughly entertained by the history, let's move into more present day and talk about the health of the economy. Now, at the west end of Canton, near the intersection of Highway 11 and Highway 18, is the industrial park. Now, the industrial park is flourishing and there's space available, but there's something coming to enhance the capability and capacity of the industrial park. This spring, Highway 18, which is currently a 2-lane road, and Canton being 9 miles away from I-29, is going to be widened to a 4-lane road to increase the capacity and access from Industrial Park to I-29. Now, to give you an idea of Canton's proximity to Sioux Falls, of course, is Canton is just literally 16 miles, and I'll say 16 short miles from Sioux Falls. And here's why. It's off of a great Highway 11, US Highway 11, with a speed limit of 65 or 67 and a half miles an hour, which means, let's talk about the commute for a second. I mean, 16 miles in a city could mean hours, but from Sioux Falls to Canton, that 16 miles is literally 16 minutes away. So regardless of whether or not the residents of Canton work in Canton or work in Sioux Falls, it takes me longer to get across town in Sioux Falls than it does for me to get to Canton from Sioux Falls. So let's take a look at residential real estate. Now, looking at historical data, year to date through November of 2022, the average home sale price in Sioux Falls came in at $349,000. Over the same period, the average home sale price in Canton is $267,000. That's 24% less than Sioux Falls. Okay, so what does $300,000 buy you in Canton? Looking at, again, the same period, $300,000 would afford an individual a 2,400 square foot home, 4 beds, 2 baths, and a 2-stall garage. But wait, there's more. Now I'm standing at the east side of town, just directly behind your view. Immediately adjacent to us is the golf course, and just up the road, I don't know, maybe 100 yards away would be the Sanford Clinic and Medical Center. What you see behind me, just west of the golf course, is an empty field. There's 64 acres back here that were recently purchased and earmarked for residential development. Now, this development will have starter homes, step-up homes, third-tier homes, and immediately adjacent to the golf course is slated for slab-on-grade villas, a beautiful area. Now, as it relates to access to healthcare, Canton has many different offerings. There are 2 pharmacies, 2 chiropractic clinics, 6 dentists and specialties, 2 health clubs, the Keystone Rehabilitation Treatment Center, and the Good Samaritan Center, as well as a 22-bed hospital and clinic with a variety of services. As you can imagine, with the close proximity to Sioux Falls and the 2 largest health systems in the region headquartered there, Canton also has access right here in town to some of the region's best healthcare. Now, I'm standing outside the Sanford Medical Center and Hospital, whereby there's a number of different services available right here. They include the general things like family medicine, general practice, screenings, etc., but a number of different specialties as well, including general surgery, geriatric medicine, emergency services, behavioral health. when you're in Canton, you're well taken care of as far as healthcare is concerned. So let's have a look at the Canton School District. Now, the Canton School District serves K through 12. There are roughly around 1,000 students that are enrolled and roughly 40 teachers. Now, according to the National Centers for Education, Canton ranks in the top 20% of all South Dakota public schools and ranks in the top 10% specifically for reading and language arts. Let's look at some athletics. In the football arena, Canton has won 4 championships as recently as 2019. But Canton's really well known for wrestling, of course. According to the South Dakota High School Activities Association, I found that Canton has 7 championships, and 6 of them came in the last 7 years. Now, the city of Canton hosts a number of events or community celebrations. I'd like to highlight just a couple. The first one is the Canton Civil War Days. Now, this is new. It was introduced this year in August for the first time, and it consists of, as the title suggests, a reenactment of Civil War battles, and it takes place in a 21-acre plot, if you will. And in addition to the battles, there are also sideshows, of course, vendors, food, music, and much more. And within these 21 acres is not just the battle reenactment field, but also campsites and paths for people. I don't have pictures of it because, of course, I wasn't there, but if you follow this link up here, there's some pretty cool videos of the event. Now, the second one I want to talk about is one of my personal favorites. That's the Canton Car Show. Now, the Canton Car Show, to give you a little history, it started in 1985, and it grew up to as many as 650 show cars in this event. And again, I have personal experience. My family and I and friends, we would ride our motorcycles down just to participate in this event, and I would drool. And now, if you're aware of the Canton Car Show and you like it as much as I do, you also know that it hasn't been occurring lately, but there's promise and hope. In my interviews and my communication with the community leaders, there's intent to bring it back, but there's a rate limiting step here. They're looking for some volunteers to help put the event on. So if you're interested in that event, I highly encourage you to call the Chamber of Commerce, their general office, and hold on here for a second, phone number, and I'll put it down here. It's 605-764-7864. Please sign up. We'd like to bring that car show back. Now let's take a little peek into the recreational park and scenic areas that Canton offers. Now I'm standing outside Kennedy Park. Behind me is the ball diamond, some other recreational areas, but it used to be the home of the city pool. Now the city pool found its end of life. Yet the city voted a $4.2 million project to replace the pool. Now construction has not started just yet because of COVID, of course, the cost of construction, materials, etc. So there isn't a date as to when ground will be broken, but it will be a gorgeous $4.2 million swimming pool facility. In addition to Kennedy Park and the amazing pool that's coming, Canton also is the home of CHAUTAUQUA Park on the south side of Canton. It has access to the Big Sioux River. Now, there are plans to revamp this park further than what it is today. And right now there's disc golf, there's picnic areas, there's nature walks, but the long-term plans consist of things like easier access to the Big Sioux River for fishing, walking trails, bike trails connecting CHAUTAUQUA Park and Canton to Newton Hills. Now, one can hardly talk about Canton without thinking about Newton Hills State Park. Obviously, I'm standing at the entrance of the park right now. I personally love this park, and there's a number of different reasons why. First of all, I love that it's so close to the Big Sioux River. And the reason I love that is, in a flat area of the state, in this park, there are hills, breaks, draws, creek bottoms, heavily wooded areas. You gotta see it both in the winter and the summer. It's great for hiking. It's great for cross-country skiing. You can rent bikes here. Great camping. There's an amphitheater. There's recreation areas, courts. It's just too much to list. These beautiful little A-frame cabins, as well as some bigger modern cabins. I love this park. The other cool thing about it is it's got just Big Sioux access to the river right over here. So I'm currently standing at what's my favorite part of Newton Hills. I happen to be standing on a one-lane road that's closed for the winter months, but as the motorcycle enthusiast I am, this is a loop that runs through the park, and like I said, it's one way, but the trees are overgrown over the loop, if you will, and especially in the summer when the trees are in full bloom and the leaves are covering, it's a beautiful tunnel all the way through the state park. Now, it's also fun in the winter because they do close this road for obvious reasons. Cross-country skiing, that's what this is designated for right now. One other thing that I've done here in the state park, especially in this area, is I've brought my horse trailer with living quarters and horses, camped here, and rode horses through the state park, and that was beautiful too. And finally, I'd like to share my personal experience with Canton. While I've never lived there myself, before being in real estate, I was a pharmacist, and I worked full-time in Sioux Falls, but I'd often pick up extra shifts. And one of the shifts I liked to pick up was Saturday mornings in Canton. And here's why. In Sioux Falls, the pace of life is much faster. Our prescription volume was much higher. And in Sioux Falls, it felt like I was moving people in and out of the pharmacy just as fast as I could. But in Canton, the experience was completely different. Oftentimes people would come in with their prescriptions, but they would stay and grab a cup of coffee and they'd strike up personal conversation with me. And I got to know my patients on a personal level as I was servicing their pharmacy needs. And I truly believe that, much like for me, for the residents of Canton, it was as much about the experience as it was picking up the commodity, that being the prescription. And I think my personal experience epitomizes both the community and the culture of Canton. I mean, this is a sense of community where people stop and visit with each other. They need to trust one another and be available to one another. And you have that small town atmosphere being just a hop, skip, and a jump from the more fast-paced metro urban area of Sioux Falls. Well, that's a wrap for me. Again, this is Chris Sonnenschein with eXp Realty. If you like the content of this video, please like and subscribe to my channel so you do not miss out on all things real estate and all things living in Sioux Falls and our surrounding communities. Also, please drop comments below and help me identify the next Sioux Empire community for my next community tour. Chris Sonnenschein, it's my pleasure to keep you informed.